Welcome back, everybody. My name is Cyborg, and I am joined by Temp once again, and this time we are doing the review for Halloween 2 back in 1981, and that is the follow-up to John Carpenter's Halloween back in 1978. So if you haven't checked out our first review of Halloween 1978, go ahead and check that out. Like I said, this one we are going to be covering Halloween 2. And if you aren't sure what's going on, we are going to be reviewing all of the Halloween movies in order leading up to the new movie. We're hoping to hit the new one as it comes out, so we'll see if we can do that. In the meantime, we're doing one at a time until we complete the whole series, and we hope to go on to other horror series after this. So with that said, let's get to the review. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Cannot complain.
Good. All right. So in this film, this is a sequel, obviously following up from the original. And this was not a planned sequel. John Carpenter did not plan for a sequel following up from Halloween, the original. But, enough money thrown at your face, obviously. And it wasn't just a money thing. I think it was, if I recall, they were going to make a sequel anyways. So he's like, you know what? If you're going to make a sequel, then he's at least going to try and make it right. So this is the one that I alluded to in the last one where he did a lot of writing under the influence. So I think it shows.
Yeah, it really, really, really shows.
And he didn't direct this one. This one was directed by Rick Rosenthal. So, yep. Not done by John Carpenter, so he was just the writer along with Deborah Hill. And also noticeably different is the score of the movie. It's less piano and more synthesizer or synth, which I'm not hating. I love synthesizer and used in films, but it was a little different. The whole movie just felt a little bit different in tone.
Yeah, it works in some parts. In some parts, I like the synthesizer a lot. Not just like a little better, but I think it's a much better fit. But as a whole, it's very choppy. When it doesn't work, it's very noticeable.
Right.
And I feel like there's just less music in this one overall. I feel like a lot of the ambience is gone in this one, and because there's no room for it. Because in the mix, there's a lot of extras. There's a lot more dialogue. The environments are noisier. Just you're working with different set pieces, but I mean, honestly, outside of the credits, I don't even remember most of the music, to tell you the truth.
Well,
and I just saw this movie yesterday, so
yeah. I mean, right off the bat, you're greeted by Mr. Sandman, so that's a catchy little tune.
Yeah, that was nostalgic. That was, man, I remember because like I said on the previous review, I saw Halloween 2 first before I saw the first Halloween on a shitty VHS, so that when that Mr. Sandman cued, I'd forgotten that, and that really brought me back. That was a big wave of nostalgia for me. So
right.
That whole beginning, I really enjoyed seeing again.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And once again, we have good credits. This time you go inside the pumpkin or the jack-o'-lantern, and it gets all creepy and spooky. But yeah, they stay pretty in line with the original credits, and then as I've said before, this was not a planned sequel, so right off the bat, you can kind of see some of the differences, even though they take place the same night, and they pick up right where it left off, like literally right where it left off. You see the ending of the last movie once again, and then you see a different angle of Michael Myers going up and over the railing, except, like I said, you can see it from a different angle, so it's odd. So you can actually see Michael like walk up a ramp onto the railing. Like, it's not like he stumbled backwards and then tumbled over the railing. No, his feet were on top of the railing because he just walks. It's obvious that he just goes up a ramp. So that was kind of odd. I mean, it was like that in the first one, but just the different angle, it was less noticeable. And one other change, which is weird, and that's that Loomis, since it carries on from the first one, this time Loomis, it goes right to him, going out the door, and then he goes and actually observes the spot on the ground where Michael fell, and this time he's more surprised. Like, I kind of praised in the last one that Loomis kind of had that look like he knew this was going to happen, that he couldn't be stopped. But in this one, it kind of plays it up like he's shocked that he's still going. So I don't know. I don't know why they made that change, but much like this movie in general, they probably did a lot of things without thinking too hard about it.
Yeah, it's funny though because I was actually trying to think. I was in. Maybe you already mentioned this, but do you know if this was a reshoot or were they using previous footage and mixing it with new footage?
I'm pretty sure they were using previous footage and mixing it with new footage.
Because I mean, I feel like I don't know. I feel like if they went with the previous cut in the first one, where he just has that ominous look instead of the surprise look, it doesn't really make sense with how they wrote the character in this one, where he's just crazy and manic and just screaming, we got to get Michael. Because he was kind of doing that in the first movie, but just, I don't know, he seemed a little more, even more so unstable in this one. Loomis felt very different in this movie.
Yes.
Especially considering that there's no transition. The movie just kind of bleeds into part two. And I don't know, we'll probably get into that a bit later. But
See,
I think they knew there was a tonal difference.
no, I agree with you. Loomis definitely felt quite different. Yeah, I mean, just carrying on from the opening scene, we see Michael. We kind of see from his point of view, he's trying to hide and stay, kind of lay low a bit, and then he comes across a family, takes the knife out of the kitchen right next to the ham off the cutting board, and then the lady, comes across blood, and then he ends up killing some girl, right next door to them for no reason. That's kind of what Michael does. He just kind of kills. So that was odd. I find it odd that he kills that girl, which he didn't have to, but then like all the kids and people on the street that he passes by later in the movie, like, nah, he's just blending in at that point. Like he's on a mission to go find Laurie Strode. Like he's trying to finish the job of the one that got away. So I just thought that was interesting that he let the couple live, the old couple, but I don't know, it was like very picky and choosy, which was weird.
I guess, I mean, you can really feel the new director in this movie because there's a lot of really strange choices. I imagine like most of the people he was killing had some resemblance or some semblance of Laurie, and the old people just didn't match the profile, so they didn't have that innate rage associated with Michael Myers. We have to talk. We briefly alluded to it in the previous video, but we need to talk about the imprint in the lawn when Michael Myers fell off the balcony. Like, it's so silly looking. Now, and it's also completely unrealistic because in order for that imprint to have happened, he would have had to perfectly distribute his body weight when he hit the ground. He basically had to land like a starfish. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So it's just like, why did you show me that, director? Did you not think I was going to believe that he landed on the grass if I didn't see like a Looney Tunes silhouette or imprint? I just so
Michael Myers always lands on his feet. He's like a cat.
It's like a triple backflip.
Yeah.
It's the ground. There's a dude with a little sign that says 10 on it in the background.
Well, I have a reason. I didn't thought about it when I brought it up, but I do have a reason for why he killed that girl and not anybody else in that beginning part. And that's because that's something I remember watching a documentary on this one a while back, and basically John Carpenter didn't feel like this, like he felt like fans were more bloodthirsty by this point, especially this is post Friday the 13th at this point. So he thought, we need to enter more blood and more gore and just more kills here to keep people interested. So I'm pretty sure that one at the beginning where he pops up and kills that girl in her house for no reason was a result of that. Like the director wasn't actually the one pushing for that. It was John Carpenter who kind of came back at the last minute for reshoots and shot that scene to gore it up a bit, or add to the body count and make sure there's one right off the bat, which a lot of horror movies do these days, especially.
I can believe it. I mean, it's not really a surprise. It's also just sequelitis too. Just the idea of, you got up everything up to 11 now.
Sure.
If you did it in the first movie, you got to do it bigger this time. And that's a really, I think that's going to be common in a lot of this review. We're going to see a lot of that everywhere. I mean, just the cast is bigger.
Yeah, I mean, if we're covering characters, like half of them I didn't even have like a note about, just because they're so minor. I don't even know if they had a name. So yeah, it's definitely a noticeable difference from the first one, which had very, very few characters, and it was kind of easy to keep track of who was who. Like there was so many nurses in there that I just in my notes I just put nurse. Like I don't know who that one in particular was.
Well,
So
the breakout character was Jimmy, and Jimmy doesn't do shit. Jimmy basically just stares at Jamie Lee Curtis for about 45 minutes of the movie and just kind of wheedles out by the final act. You never see him again. Um,
yeah, I got a note on him as well. But so
a
just
note.
covering, yeah, right, exactly, singular note. I have
I mean,
note.
you're right. Yeah.
I have some note about him. So yeah, kind of continuing along with my notes here before we get to the characters. Michael. So it was interesting that along Michael's path, basically, in the beginning scenes where he's stumbling around trying to figure out what he's gonna do next. It was interesting. You run into a couple weird things. One I did like is that Night of the Living Dead is on the TV this time, so they're kind of paying homage once again to a classic horror film. And then you have the little kid with the razor in their tongue. You ever hear about that? Like the urban myth
I didn't.
or urban
I only
legend?
know about it because I Wikipedia'd after I saw the movie. So during that scene, I had no idea what his injury was. I was looking at him, I was like, "It's a big ass thing he's got against his face." But it never occurred to me that he ate a razor. I just thought like he was injured and he had a big ass thing against his face. It never even occurred to me that they were trying to play off of Halloween urban like legends about
Right.
razors and candy and shit. And that's real, by the way. That happened in my hometown.
Oh, I'm
Not
sure.
even when I
Yeah.
was that young. So that does happen.
Oh, I'm sure it has happened. Yeah, and yeah, he or she. I don't even remember what the kid's gender was. Doesn't matter. So they had a razor in their tongue. Like you could actually see it in the movie. It was a really dark film. I mean, that in general, it was hard to tell what the hell was going on in some of
Yeah.
those scenes. But yeah, the kid had a razor in their tongue, just like sticking out, which was odd. But so that they threw that in. I think that was added filler. I don't believe that was one of the original scenes. That was one of those added in shots from John Carpenter. I don't know if that was a John Carpenter shot, but either way, I know that was something that was added in at a later point. So then I did find it interesting that Michael finds out where Laurie was taken because he bumps into the kid with the radio in the street. I thought that was a pretty clever way of allowing Michael to continue chase.
Yeah, I mean it works. I mean if they didn't have that scene, I probably would have just taken on faith that Michael Myers knows what he's doing. Because there's so much of that already. There's it's you don't want to overanalyze too much of any part of this movie because this movie, I mean, especially well, we'll get into that later. But this movie you take a lot on faith with Michael Myers in this movie because it just kind of all kind of perfectly falls together. But yeah, that was a good scene. I mean, I like the idea. I like the idea of random people running into Michael Myers because that's when it's the scariest, in my opinion. It's like,
Right.
okay, what's gonna happen? You know?
Yeah, I mean that adds to his creep factor in that there are people that just run into him on the streets and he just completely ignores them. It gives you that kind of like what we talked about in the last review of it. It just gives you that mystery of what makes this guy tick, what's his motives, why is he doing this, why does he choose the victims he chooses. And I like that, and I like the idea that people just bump into him and he's like does not give a crap at all, and he just continues moving because he has his own motives. So I thought that was quite interesting. Then we also see, it was right around this time, a little bit before that scene, we see somebody in a Michael Myers-esque costume, which it's not really surprising that somebody, another person would have that mask, because we did learn in the first one that it was just stolen from the hardware store or whatever, as it was a popular Halloween mask. So it's not like it was, completely out of the blue that somebody else was wearing the same mask that he was, even though it had really like light hair. So I guess Michael Myers spray painted his a little bit. It's just funny.
Yeah,
He
he's
puts
also blonder in this movie. I feel like he seems blonder in general, so I don't know. It's hard.
yeah. I
I
mean,
was thinking that too.
it's the same mask from the original, but them not planning to make a sequel. I'm pretty sure they kept that mask under somebody's bed. I don't know if it was the producer or the writer. I forget whose bed exactly it was that they kept it under, but they just kept it under a bed. They didn't like preserve it or anything. So you can see the wear in the mask. It looks more stretched out. It has a lot more flesh tone coming through because the white paint is wearing off, and yeah, the hair's lighter. So yeah, you can definitely tell it's a little bit more worn, but it is indeed the same mask from the first. It looks a lot different. That's for sure. Like, it doesn't
It
look.
just doesn't fit the head as well. It's loose.
It's yeah, and it's a different actor playing Michael, so that
Sure.
that also plays a factor, I'm sure. Different head sizes and so on and so forth. But yeah, so we see somebody wandering across the street because why not? It's Halloween night. You're gonna run into kids and people in costumes. Well, this particular person's not only wearing the mask of Michael Myers, but also the same coveralls. So it's like the same getup down to a T. It's like this person had seen this killer somehow before, even though this is all the same night, which I thought was kind of interesting that he had the costume down.
Yeah, it's not even like a shtick. Like, it's like haunted auto mechanic. Like, I don't know why they would sell that as a two-piece. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. Did Michael Myers copy him or did he copy Michael Myers? It's like we're both wearing the same thing. One of us has to change type of deal. Though Michael Myers, to my recollection, never walked around with like a what was that, a Halloween candy bag that he was holding? Like
Yeah,
he was
not the one.
Yeah, he was just wearing like or he was holding on to like an orange candy bag, so it's a little funny to think of Michael Myers holding onto a candy bag to blend in. Just like, I don't know. It's not what I would imagine. It's just like
After I'm done killing Laurie, I'm gonna enjoy all this sweet candy.
exactly. So, some for the road. It's a long night. He was shot 6 times. So, yeah, anyways, so he just starts wandering across the street because people are like, oh, there he is. And then Loomis is about ready to unload on this guy. And then he's just flailing it, ready to put 6 more shots into him. And then, yeah, he just wanders across the street. And then this is probably the best part of the movie. All of a sudden, the guy just like looks down the road. All of a sudden, you see this car. It's a police car, I think, and it just like can't stop and just smashes into the guy. And it carries him for like 30 feet onto the front of the car and smashes into a van. This is so random.
And then it explodes.
It's so over the top. It's like it can't just hit him and then him roll over the hood or anything. It's him stuck on the grill in the front of the car, carried into a van that explodes. And not only does it explode, he's just there engulfed in complete flames. It's just like complete overkill. The only thing that would have made it better is if Loomis then proceeds to shoot him 6 times as he's on fire. Oh man, that was hilarious. So
and there's like no follow up to it too. Like well, first of all, after it happens, they're like, so you think it was Michael? Like, there's no like real reaction to it. First of all, and second of all, like, we never really hear about the scene again until like maybe 45 minutes later. They make one reference to it. So when the credits started rolling, I was like, what was the point of that scene?
Hold on. We did the guy that was driving the car was like came out of nowhere. It's like, dude, the guy was barely stumbling across the street very slowly.
That guy's going like 55 miles per hour in a fucking neighborhood.
Yes. I know, like he was going, and not only that, but he kept going after he made impact. Like he kept going all the way until he made impact with the van. Like usually you hit somebody, you slam on your brakes or something, I would assume, but yeah, he just that was hilarious. Like that had to have been done for comedy. There's no way they meant that to be tragic.
They had all this fucking money and realized we like after like 400,000, they're like, we're done. What else do we want to do? Like we paid for the extras, we paid for the neighborhood reserve. What do you want to do? Let's blow up a fucking kid. So that's what they did. Like that has to be it. That's where the extra $2.5 million budget came from. It went into that, an unexpected, unnecessary car explosion in a horror movie. So yeah.
Oh boy, I just laughed out loud when I saw that earlier. I was just like, oh my, like I just, busted out laughing. It was just so random, but so awesome. Like over the, that's something you would see in like a comedy spoof action movie or something. You would not. That was just so out of place, but so awesome.
It
Like,
had a Family Guy element to it for sure.
yeah. You remember that one time where Michael Myers was walking across the street during Halloween? Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just so random. But you're right. It does get some follow up. They find out later when they're examining the corpse that, like, the dental records match that of, like, a 17-year-old, whereas Michael Myers is 21. Then some kids show up to, like, talk to Loomis and the other police officers, and they say, you know, Ben Tramer, who was Laurie's, the one that Laurie had a date set up with. so, so poor Ben Tramer did not make it past the night. So
I did not know that. I did not make that connection. That's so interesting.
so Ben Tramer, the one that Annie set up Laurie with on a date, just got railroaded by that car and put into a van and blown up and burned to death.
Huh.
Yeah, that was their callback to the first one. It's also kind of ironic when you think about it that the guy she's interested in is dressed up exactly like Michael Myers,
Yeah.
who's trying to kill her.
I don't know. Maybe she dodged a bullet.
Yeah,
Something up with that Ben.
could have been the same guy. I don't know, but maybe they're twins or something. The Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger style. Yeah, I don't know. That was, yeah, it was just odd. I love the scene. I would not want them to remove that. Like, I'm so glad it's there. The fact that they followed up with Ben Tramer and he just got dominated, just randomly, just randomly. Maybe he was.
Also, yeah.
I was just saying, maybe he was distraught that Laurie was, you know, tried to, you know, maybe somebody tried to kill her and he drank a lot because they said he was drunk or some, like Ben Tramer was drunk and he was leaving a party. I don't know. It's just crazy. I don't even know how to explain the whole series of events.
Well, should we mention the fact that, you know, Loomis kind of killed that kid? Like, Loomis basically charged him, swinging a fucking pistol, screaming his fucking mouth off. Just, oh my God. I would have done the same thing. I would have gone awkwardly in the other direction, too. Like, I don't know.
So you're blaming Loomis for the reason why he crosses the road because he's scared about why this crazy old man and these police officers are starting to like finger this guy, and then he's just start like, "Oh, I'm getting out of here. I'm just gonna wander with my little candy bag that doesn't have like anything in it." Dude was so fucking drunk that he had no idea what was going on.
I mean, a lot of weird things had to happen for that kid to get smashed and then caught on fire. A lot of moving pieces for this to work out perfectly.
It's like a Rube Goldberg machine just to kill Ben Tramer. What's this? Laurie has one more friend out there? Someone that she cares about? Let's just smash that guy with a car. All right. So, yeah, that whole thing happened. I thought that was highly enjoyable. I think the movie's going to get rated a little bit better just for that one scene existing. That's ridiculous. I don't even, like, and they take no accountability for that either.
None. It's so weird. Like, it's not like a kid died on their watch. He fucking got hit by a car smash and caught on fire. Like, it's just crazy.
I know.
It's crazy.
You would think that would, I don't know. Like, that's, whew, I don't even, they just pretty much caused that kid's death in conjunction with the other guy that was recklessly driving. And I doubt that guy's even going to get prosecuted. Like, it just seemed like it's just like, no harm, no foul. It was an accident.
Sometimes you blow up a kid, you know, it's just part of the job.
I guess. We got more important things to worry about. I don't even know.
Did you know Michael's on the loose?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. So, the next thing I have down here, scene-wise, is when so Michael, at this point, has already gotten to the hospital because of the kid walking with the radio, so he already knows. And the security guard is walking around because he hears some noises over by a dumpster, and he goes to investigate the dumpster, and a cat jumps out. And I don't know what it is, but why is it always like a cat used as a fake out for a jump out for like a jump scare? It's so common in horror movies. I don't get it.
It's a super awkward cat too. Like they get to zoom in on his face.
Also, why are all security guards in these movies chubby? Like he's just overweight. I don't get it.
He's got the stash.
Yeah, he's pretty stereotypical there. And then we have Laurie, who's having dreams of Michael. So she's basically having, as she's sleeping in the hospital bed, she's having dreams or flashbacks. We're not really sure of when she was younger. We learn that she's adopted, and then we see her seeing Michael when he's younger. So at one point she had seen him, and they're kind of alluding to it, which we already know, that he is somehow connected to her, that they're family, that she's his sister. So it's kind of the big revelation of the movie, so to speak, even though most people these days already know that about the films. Yeah, and that's kind of them. That's kind of how, that's one of those things where John Carpenter explains that to his drinking while he was writing this, because I don't think that was originally his intent in the first movie by any means. This was just kind of him pulling something out of his ass to keep the story going or to add more plot to it than just a random guy goes on a killing spree.
Which is so weird to me because they felt it was so important to explain why he wanted to kill Laurie, but they never explain how he can drive a car. They never explain why he's able to take 12 bullets and not die. Never explained. There's all these things that don't really work out upon analysis, but that's the thing they had to explain. It's like, no, audiences will not accept the fact that she's not his sister. I don't know. That's weird to me. That is so strange to me.
Especially because, I mean, he killed other people all along the way. It's not like there was something special about Laurie. The only thing special about Laurie is, as we discussed in the last one, is that she was lucky that she wasn't allowing herself to be vulnerable. So she was just last. She wasn't, or she was just, she was saved for last in that particular grouping because it just happenstance. In fact, she would have probably been the easiest to go after out of all of them just because she was, I don't know. Who knows? Either way.
I feel like the explanation was already there anyway. He wanted to kill Laurie because he tried to kill her before and he failed. And he made her,
right.
She made him bleed. So now it's payback. You cut me, I cut you. That was fine. I don't need this convoluted story about like how like he's like, a blood relative from like years back and spent years or decades just kind of. That's a retcon, by the way. I read that in the Wikipedia. Apparently they changed it from 15 years to 21 years. Super unnecessary in my opinion, but I mean they did it. It's harmless too. I mean, this is mostly a nitpick. It feels strange to me.
15 years to 21 years for what?
That's what the Wikipedia said for the incarceration of Michael Myers.
Huh.
So that cool.
In the movie they said 15 years. In this movie they said 15 years.
Let's see. Let me find the
because he said it was something like the 15th anniversary. I remember them saying that in the film. Loomis said it was the 15th anniversary of when Michael Myers killed his sister. So, I don't know. So, either way, I mean, it's not that important, but...
Well, the exact line, and this is Wikipedia, so this is bullshit, but the exact line is, while Michael Myers is said to have committed the crime 15 years ago, and, well, I think I got the numbers wrong. So I think they changed it to 15 years, but the exact line on Wikipedia is the plot twist of Laurie being Michael Myers' sister required a retcon of the timeline between Judith's murder and the events depicted in the first Halloween. So I'm not sure what they changed exactly, but it's just a long way to go for a plot point. It just seems like a lot of traveling time.
Right.
Just to make Laurie his sister.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's move on to something I'm sure a lot of people want us to discuss, and that's that hot scene in the hydrotherapy tub. I don't know if it's cool in 2018 to rate how hot someone's body is, but I gotta ask, what would you rate Bud's ass out of 10?
140 degrees.
Yeah, that's appropriate. So yeah, the scene, obviously, we see Bud and random nurse that I never got the name of, and they are fooling around in this hydrotherapy tub. She thinks it's too hot, so it's odd because she's like, it's too hot, bud. It's too hot. Why don't you get out and go fix it? It's like, if it's too hot for you, why don't you get out of the tub that you find too hot? Like, if it's
when he goes to
uncomfortable.
change it, she stays in the tub
I
a while
know.
longer.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, if it's getting increasingly more hot as you sit there, you would think you would want to just get out of the tub. But anyway, so she's sitting there. Bud gets killed in the background. And so then Michael comes in. This is where it gets really weird. Michael comes in from behind and he like puts his hand on her shoulder and then she like starts rubbing it, but he's not like doing anything. Like, this is odd. I mean, Michael's one to play tricks. We covered that in the last one. He still kind of has that childlike trickster in him where he likes to mess with people before he kills them. But this was like the first like sexual that I can recall, where he's just kind of putting his hand on her shoulder. She then starts to like put it on her, like she moves it down to her chest and then starts like sucking on his finger. So weird. And then he
and the
pulls
finger
it back.
has like oil marks on it and shit.
It's just gross.
Pretty.
Like, it must taste awful. And then he pulls it away, and then that's when she like realizes, it's not Bud. And then he proceeds to dunk her in there several times as it's getting hotter and hotter. So that's that. There's boobs.
Yeah, what's brutal about that scene is, well, it's not just boobs, but it's like scalding boobs.
I know.
It's very. And I remember as a kid just being like, "Oh, this is awful," because he brings her back up for air so she doesn't drown. He wants to make sure she boils, and that's what makes it so rough. That's what makes it so hard to watch.
Yeah, it's like torture at that point for sure. Which Michael doesn't really do. I mean, he's not really a torture guy. He's more of a I kill you guy. He's pretty straight to the point. He doesn't seem to, at least to this point. Obviously, we're only on the second movie, but his MO, from what I recall, is pretty much I just stab you and you're done, or I strangle you, you're done.
He's very efficient. He's very clean.
Yes. So, and then we move on to, he writes, we go to a scene where Loomis and the police officers, they go to the school and he's written Sam Hain on the chalkboard, put the knife on the picture, indicating his sister, which they immediately get like sister. Like they did, like the world's greatest detectives apparently. So this is just all odd. It's building up this storyline that Laurie's his sister and Sam Hain, or however you pronounce that, some Halloween tradition. And then we get, I don't know, just throughout this movie, it just feels so weird. It does feel very different. It is, you can definitely feel the influences of the slasher genre at this point. Like, you can tell that they are not trying, well, I mean, they're trying to stick to the original, but they're introducing a lot more slasher cliches, and it's less artsy, so to speak, and starting to be a bit more paint by the numbers. We do get some awesome visuals, though, throughout the film. One that I particularly noted down was, it's an awesome visual when Michael fades in from the darkness after the nurse finds Dr. Mixture, who's like the drunk doctor that is treating Laurie. Like, I read it's like a passing line towards the beginning of the film when Laurie gets brought in, and they're saying, "Is there a doctor here?" And he's like, "Well, Dr. Mixture, but he's drunk," or something like that. And he's just like comes in and starts treating her. It's just so odd. Like, once again, just another random thing that they threw in there for no reason apparently.
And that's it. I think the next time you see him, I think he's dead.
Yeah.
I don't think he has any screen time after that.
Pretty sure. And yeah, another random nurse finds his body with a needle jabbed into his eye, and then that's when it has that awesome visual, which is a callback to the first one. This one is actually, I don't know if it was done better or not, but it is actually done really well, where the mask fades in from the darkness and it actually looks really, really good. And then he grabs her and puts the needle into the side of her head, which, all right. So odd. And then we got another awesome visual that I marked down here where Michael's silhouette is behind the curtain while Jimmy and random nurse are looking for Laurie after she left the room, which I did find that scene funny when Michael goes in there to kill Laurie and he he doesn't even look like his heart's into it in this film. Like he's just like he's not even looking down. Usually he'll look at his hand or he'll look at his victim, but this time he's just like staring straight forward, and then he just randomly starts jabbing with his hand, like doing the slashing motion. But he's just staring straight forward. Like he just doesn't seem as excited this time.
I mean, perhaps you could attribute it to the. I mean, it could be the whole like he's had a long night kind of thing. But
He's like, I'm ready to go to sleep. He's cranky at this point.
I
Like,
got my candy. Let's kill Laurie. Let's call it. Okay.
he's like, I've been shot 6 times.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to go home, get my juice box. Anyways, so we see another scene where Jimmy comes across another random nurse, and somehow, like I said, just like in the first movie, a lot of people have no peripheral vision, so he walks up to her, notices that she's bleeding out from a tube, and then all of a sudden he looks down at the ground, and you see the entire floor is pretty much covered in blood. Like, it is just a massive puddle. And then he goes and turns around and just slips, and he's knocked out. It's odd. It was just odd. Like, I don't even understand. Yeah, I don't even
It was like
understand.
slapstick. I couldn't believe that happened.
It was just missing like the banana peel noise where like shoot. I don't know. It's odd.
And again, that dude is pretty much done for the movie. The next, he has one more scene that doesn't really go anywhere, and that's it. Like, that was Jimmy. That was our great love interest. Everybody.
Yeah, another scene we have here is when random nurse is looking for Laurie, and then all of a sudden Michael comes up behind her when she finally does find Laurie. Michael's there and stabs her in the back with the weird little scalpel looking thing, and then holds her up, and then as she's being held up in the air, her head drops, and then her shoes fall off and hit the ground. Funny little, just a little ad lib thing, I'm sure. And then rounding out here, we're almost at the end of the high notes here, or I guess the little notable things. When Laurie discovers the security guard's body and Michael is closing in slowly down there in like the boiler room or whatever, that's actually a pretty intense moment. I do give him credit for that. Like when Michael's closing in on her and the red light and all the lighting and stuff, and she's trying to figure out where to go, and she spots a window and she kind of climbs up there. It takes her so long that like Michael actually gets within striking distance, and I thought that was actually paced pretty well. I was sitting there like, oh god, I already know what happens. So it was just still like, it was still one of those that I thought was pretty intense.
I'd agree. Yeah, no critique there.
And then I do like how Loomis puts the gun to the officer's head who's driving the car. So he's in the back of the car, the not the police car, but the mental hospital or whatever car, I forget what it's called, and he's talking to her, and that's when they discover the whole sister thing, or she tells him about this hidden record that wasn't open, that even Loomis didn't know about, and that Michael Myers, to protect Laurie, that they sent her to a foster home. And that's when Loomis threatens the officer and says we need to turn around and go back or go to the hospital. And I like how Loomis puts the gun next to the officer's head. And the officer says, in a very like calm and cool manner, like he just doesn't even care that Loomis puts a gun to his head. He's just like, Dr. Loomis, you're getting yourself in a lot of trouble. Like he's just like so calm, cool, and collected about it. And then Loomis shoots the window out as like a warning shot. And then he's like, oh shit, I better get out of here. Oh, he means business. Like you didn't think the loaded gun next to your head wasn't good enough, but
it's so typical dude with a mustache kind of acting.
Those
it's
those
Midwestern
dudes.
mustache guy. I can't even explain it. It's the best I got.
And then we got, so at this point, Loomis and the officer do reach the hospital. Right before that, I guess, we do have Laurie making it out to the car to hide. And that's what you mentioned before, where Jimmy comes in. He gets in the car with Laurie. He's like, oh, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. But you can tell he's pretty out of it. He might have a concussion here. And then all of a sudden, he just passes out with his face on the horn, making a ton of noise like an idiot. And then she takes him off the horn. But in a cruel twist of fate, she takes him off the horn to stop making noise. But then as soon as she crawls out, Loomis and them arrive, but she can't like muster up like her voice just because of she's so beaten down that she can't get herself to scream. So then all the noise that was happening before would have helped her like lead them to her, but that's just the way it goes.
Yeah,
And
that was a frustrating scene.
yes,
That was really hard to watch.
yeah, yeah. And then when they finally make it inside, that's when she can muster a scream out, and then they somehow don't hear her. But then they do see Michael come in to the come in. He walks in through the glass door, which is great. The steel beams, the steel handles mean nothing to him. He's just like he just walks straight through. He gets shot another 6 times, and then he goes down. And the dumb officer, like a complete idiot, he starts to like go up to Michael to like examine the body, but then Loomis warns him, stay away from him. He's still breathing. The officer's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right. And then Loomis like stops paying attention. He starts consoling the other guy or whatever, the nurse that he's with from the mental institution. And then all of a sudden, as he's not paying attention, the officer then's like, oh, I'm gonna go up to him and examine his body once again, even though we just went over this.
The mustache, dude.
Yeah, it's like we just went over this not even 1 minute ago. And then yeah, he gets his throat slashed, of course, and then Michael's getting back up. So yeah, it's this leads up to the end, and yada yada yada. Loomis, Laurie have a final showdown with Michael. Michael ends up stabbing Loomis because Loomis's gun just isn't loaded for some reason. He does give Laurie a gun, so maybe he gave her the wrong gun. Maybe he was purposely trying to sabotage her. You take this unloaded gun, I'm gonna take the one with bullets. And it was old switcheroo on accident. He forgot which goblet was poison. So then he gets stabbed, and then he starts flailing about. And then Michael goes after Laurie. Laurie shoots both of his eyes out, and he starts flailing around like a madman with his little scalpel, just like endlessly flailing for like 3 minutes straight. Just like, dude, just commit to a side and start going for the walls. Don't just stand in place swinging about. And
Well,
then,
his perspective didn't change either, so it's like, okay, she's still in front of you, even if you're blind.
I know.
Go forward, move forward. Like,
I
it's just so
know.
frustrating.
Process by elimination. Like, go up, eliminate that corner out of the equation. But no, that does not happen. Then Loomis blows up him and Michael. Laurie escapes. Michael's body in a fire suit, because he is bulky as hell all of a sudden, comes out. He walks a few feet and then falls down. This is where the movie ends. You hear Mr. Sandman playing, and Laurie is sitting in the ambulance. Everything's all good. There was going to be an extra scene that they did shoot, because I did see footage of it, but it's not in the final theatrical cut, I don't believe. And that's Jimmy. Basically, you see a body rise up, like sit up while Laurie's in the ambulance, and it's supposed to be like one last scare, and it's a body that's covered in a sheet, and it sits up, but it ends up being Jimmy. So he's just like pulls the sheet off.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
That would have been cool. Like that. First of all, like that would have made all the buildup with Jimmy make sense.
Right.
And yeah, okay, that's interesting.
So I don't know why that wasn't included out of all the things. I mean, that couldn't have been more than 20 seconds of footage, but I do remember seeing that footage, so I know it was shot. So anyways, so that's the movie, and overall thoughts of the movie before we get into the characters.
Oh, man, it's a mess. Like it's a lot of shit happening at the same time, and it just jumps from set piece to set piece, and it just, man, I was exhausted watching this movie. I was so tired, but it picks up hard in the last 25 minutes. Like last 25 minutes, it really comes together nicely. But God, it just it's like, okay, well, now we're in the house in the second movie. Okay, we're at the crime scene. Okay, well now we're street walking with Michael Myers. Okay, now a kid blows up. All right, and then the next it just keeps going. Then we're in the hospital. Then we meet Jimmy. Who's Jimmy? Here's the doc. He's, oh my God, it's so the movie's just muddled. Like it was a very difficult sitting for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, over the series, this one has always, to me, been like a second or third favorite in the franchise, because obviously there's a lot of low points of the franchise. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think the movie's bad, But when you have the first movie as good as it is, this definitely is a considerable drop in quality, but also just in atmosphere and tone, in the way it's shot, in the way everything is presented, in the way Michael's presented, in the way Laurie is presented, in the way Loomis is presented. Like, it definitely feels like a noticeable departure. And it's not, I think the noticeable departure is even more noticeable because it's supposed to take place on the same night. And when you have characters acting as different as they do, and just the tone and everything as different as it is on that same continuation of that same night, it's definitely noticeable, jarring. I don't know how else to describe it, but I don't know. It's not that I don't enjoy the movie. I've seen it a few times over the years, and I still enjoy it for what it is. It has its high points, but yeah, it doesn't come close to the original by any stretch. Um, yeah, it's the tone. It's just the way things it's the way things are shot. We can get into the characters and we can kind of obviously come back to the overall movie in our opinion. But getting to some of the characters, and there's really not a whole lot to talk about with some of these characters just because, I don't know, it's just like I said, it just lacks a lot of the details and the memorable stuff that the original has. First on the bat, here we have Sheriff Brackett, who's barely in the movie. He returns from the first one. He's Annie's father. We see him come across, he's notified that Annie is dead, which once he reacts to that and blames Loomis, saying it's all his fault, then he pretty much just goes away. No, obviously, but I don't know. Not a whole lot of impression this guy left here.
I'm glad they at least observed they needed to have that scene because it would have been so strange if, the sheriff's daughter died and it's just never acknowledged.
Agreed on that point, and I wasn't even sure if it was the same actor. Like, he looked really different to me. I did look it up, and it is the same guy, but it's just weird to me. I don't know. Like, in that scene with Laurie in the original where how you doing, Laurie? Everyone's entitled to a good scare, huh? Where he's, like, overacting. I don't know. He just looked very different in the scene. It just looked like a guy that looked similar to him. It just didn't seem like the same guy. But anyways,
he was significantly aged. He looks just kind of rough in the face.
Even though it's only been like
Features
3 years.
yeah, that's what alcohol does to you, man. It's a hard industry.
So next up we have, we already talked about Dr. Mixture. There's really not a whole lot to add to that guy. One notable character out of all the doctors and nurses was Bud, and he was the one that was in the hydrotherapy. I want to say chamber, but it's a pool. It's a little spa. Anyways, he's interesting. He does that little quote, "Amazing Grace, come sit on my face, don't make me cry, I need your pie." I think that was ad-libbed by the actor, I'm pretty sure. So that's a funny, weird little line. He was interesting character. He's your typical horror movie pervert.
Yeah, he was very much embodying the slasher perv asshole. Yes. Almost like the jock douchebag, but the nurse version, I guess. Yeah.
So, yeah, not a whole lot to say about him. So it really just kind of, unless you have anybody else to talk about, it really leads to the big three, which is the big three throughout the whole franchise for the most part. You have Loomis, you have the leading lady, Laurie, and Michael Myers. Did you have anybody else to cover? Other than Ben Tramer, who, rest in peace, Ben Tramer.
I can't remember her name, but I'm going to say the nurse who reprised her role from the first one. Yeah, I thought she was decent. I didn't recognize her at all, but I looked it up.
Neither did Loomis. He's like, it's like, dude, you haven't seen her for what, a day? I'm pretty sure it was only a day that it took him to travel from, to go and find Michael, because the first movie all took place on one day, if I remember right. So dude, you just saw her when he escaped the night before, I guess. So yeah, it only been a day or two tops since he saw her.
And she had way more screen time. They gave her a much meatier role this time.
Maybe that's why I didn't recognize her. He's you were hardly... I could just see Donald Pleasant. You were hardly in the last movie. You were in it for 6 seconds.
I was gonna say that. You beat me to it by starting coughing.
Anyways. Yeah, she was in this one a lot more, for sure.
And that's all I can think of. I feel like I'm leaving someone out, but I can't think of anyone else.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I mean, you have all the nurses that were pretty minor and didn't really do much. You had Jimmy, I guess. Jimmy. Anything else you wanted to add to Jimmy?
No, nothing. I can't think of anything.
There's the security guard. He didn't really do much. There was the people on the streets. There was the kid with the thing in their tongue. Yeah, no, there wasn't really. It was all pretty much centered on the hospital this time rather than the neighborhood. So, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the big three. Let's go ahead and tackle Loomis here. So right off the bat, the thing I did notice about Loomis is, one, he doesn't have as memorable lines as the first one. Like, his writing wasn't as good. Don't get me wrong, Donald Pleasance still played him, I think, well. It was still a decent performance, and he's always good at his acting and his mannerisms. But I just don't feel like the writing was as strong. He wasn't as subdued this time. Like, a lot of the things I enjoyed about Loomis in the first film was just how he just had this kind of presence about him. Donald presence. No, I don't know. He just had this presence about him that the way he carried himself, he was just kind of like, he was very commanding, but he didn't always have to like freak out to get that commanding presence. Whereas this time it was pretty much all freak outs. So yeah, this time was a little bit different, and he really just didn't. He wasn't as he wasn't as in the focus this time. I feel like, even though Michael got some decent screen time last time, I feel like he took a lot more of Loomis's screen time. I feel like Michael got a lot more focus this time, a lot more like he was shown a lot more. I felt like, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel like Loomis got as much out of this one.
Yeah, and the Michael stuff. I went into this movie knowing Michael was going to get more screen time, but a lot of his screen time I feel like is compressed into the last 25 minutes. So it didn't feel as noticeable to me. And Loomis is really, I mean, he's sort of like the connecting wire between part one and part two, because it's not Laurie, in my opinion. It's got to be Loomis. Laurie doesn't really do anything in this movie. So yeah, it's just flailing madman. I agree with you. It didn't work the same way. I feel like Don Pleasance is giving it 100%, but it just I think this is just, again, different directors. A different guy in the seat, and Don Pleasance is just he's just trying to make lemonade. I feel like Rick Rosenthal just had a very different idea of what he wanted to do with Loomis, or he had a very different idea of where Loomis was going.
Right.
Like part one was a descent, part two is the bottom, and now Loomis is just flaying a pistol in front of kids like that. Just
I know.
That. I guess he was just trying to show where Loomis was as someone who's like falling apart now. The descent is over. He just wanted to show Loomis as a crazy person now, and I get it, but I don't think it translated. I don't think it had enough screen time to really make that work.
Right. Yeah, it just wasn't as strong for the character, which I do like Loomis quite a bit, so that's a shame. Not bad still, but yeah, he was kind of that, as you said, flailing madman. Wacky inflatable arm tube man wielding a gun.
Yeah, that's a good part about, Donald Pleasance. He can only be so bad. Like, it's like Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee has a small margin of bad. You can't, he's still fun when he's on screen. He knows how to work the camera in front of him, so.
All right, well, let's move on. Yeah, let's move on to Laurie Strode. So, my initial thoughts on her, pretty defeated in this movie. Not much of a factor. She felt very, like she didn't feel like the main character here, even though obviously the story was still centered around her as much as it was around Michael, I guess you could say. Maybe even more so Michael this time around. She just felt like other than the last 20-30 minutes where, the whole, following around the hospital and stuff, she just felt, I don't know, she didn't have that strong female overcoming the odds type of thing. She felt, like I said, very defeated, doesn't do a whole lot, wearing a wig, that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's it's hard to talk about Laurie because she doesn't do a lot of stuff. She basically sleeps, and then at the hour point, she just kind of runs around the hospital, and that's it. She was fine. She gave a great performance. I really believe Jamie Lee Curtis was sleeping in those scenes, but I just don't know. I don't know what else to say. Okay, let me put it this way. her acting was almost too good in the sense that it contrasted with all like the low budget actors in the hospital. I almost feel like there was too much of a foil between her acting and everyone else's acting. So it almost was, I don't know, it felt almost out of place how good of an actress she was compared to the B-list actors around her, and that was kind of distracting. Like when you see her, like asking the doctor what's going on, and the doctor's all like all drunk. Like it's just I don't know. It's weird. It's strange. Um, I don't. I wish I had more to say on her, but that's really all I got. Other than
Yeah.
that, she was fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's just not a whole lot there, which is a shame because obviously Jamie Lee Curtis is great and she was fantastic in the first one. But yeah, she just kind of she's just kind of there. And then finally we have Michael Myers, of course, if you want to take the lead on this one.
Just the movement's very different in this movie. I just feel like he moved. I don't. You kind of touched on it earlier. He doesn't seem like a ghost anymore. He just seems kind of like a tired, worn out old man. That's kind of how he walks around, and posture is different. It feels like a different actor, but he still did a good job. The best shot in the movie was when the nurse found the doctor was dead, and Michael Myers comes into the lighting. That was
Right.
such a great shot.
That was
Um,
probably the closest to the first movie that they got with that one shot right there.
Indeed. And I feel like the mask is a bit of a problem. The mask does not fit on his head correctly. It's very loose around the neck, and that kind of takes away whole like the shape. I feel like that illusion has been dispelled. It's now a dude in a mask, and it's unambiguous.
It's not just that.
It,
I mean, even like his posture, the whole thing, he looks puffy. I wonder if he had like shoulder pads on or something because even the
maybe.
coveralls, he looked pretty, I don't know, puffy. Like he didn't look like a normal dude. He looked odd. It just oddly shaped and the collar was like it was going straight up and just the whole neck area looked a lot different. I don't know. That's just one thing I noticed. Yeah, just overall, the actor, whoever played him, just felt different. And even the way he moved, like the way he walked, it was just very, like his posture about the way he walked. I mentioned this in our first review. There's a very specific thing I think of when I think of Michael. And this time he was that very, just straight up slow moving. I did not like, and I know this is such an odd thing to complain about, but I did not like the weapon he was using for the whole film, the whole little tiny scalpel. That to me just does not, that's not what I think of when I think of Michael Myers. I think big old overly sized butcher knife, and to me that's more intimidating than this little itsy little dinky thing. It's like if he was holding a screwdriver the whole time, a small screwdriver.
Yeah. I mean, when he definitely stabs people, you don't quite feel it the same way.
Right. I don't know, it just felt odd to me. I didn't like that so many of them were just with that little thing. It just the little scalpel thing. I wasn't digging that. I wasn't digging the way he looked when he was just walking through the hallways very slowly with that little dinky thing in his hand. And like I said, the way his collar was, it was just very tight around his neck. Whereas in the original, I'm pretty sure it was a lot like just the collar was more loosely, kind of like the Fawns or something where it was up, but it was more out. Like in this one, it was pretty like tightly around his neck, but still up. And like you said, the mask made his head look bulbous and just it was loose. It was weird. You see his eyes a lot more. I don't know. It just felt odd. I don't know. It looked like the mask melted. It was just did not look the same.
I was also confused about the eyes thing because Laurie shot him in the eyes. Did I understand that right?
I mean that's the way they play it off, even though it wouldn't. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, she is obviously a sharpshooter, but what did you notice?
Well, there's no bullet holes in the mask, right? So it had to be in the eye holes where the bullets went
Right.
through, right?
That's what they're implying, I believe.
But you can see his eyes.
When
I mean, during the scene, I can kind of see the eyes through the mask.
like when he's swinging
So
around like randomly.
yeah,
Weird. Yeah, I don't know what's you can even see the blood dripping from down his head. So like underneath the mask it's coming from
that's
above
another
his
great
eyes.
shot, by the way.
It
That
is
looked really
good. Yeah. That is a good shot. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was the intended to be the eyes, so I'm not entirely sure there. Don't know how that adds up, but yeah, I don't know. Just it wasn't bad. It wasn't like a bad performance as Michael. I'm not trying to make it sound like it was awful or anything like that, or the look was awful. It just didn't feel as good as the original. And I think that's kind of what the whole movie amounts to, wrapping this back up, is it wasn't bad. I wouldn't classify this as a horrible movie or anything. I just don't think when you are comparing it to the original, which we have to because that's what we're doing here. Uh, it just felt so far below the original. Like it dropped off significantly from the high of the original. So I mean, Michael, Laurie, Loomis, I mean, they all fall into that category of just not being on the same level as they were before, and that's a shame. The just the way the shots are done. Michael in general, like there's very few shots of him in the like just you don't see as many of the shots like you did in the first one where he's in the background and you hardly even notice him like he's in the window or something. There's just not as many of those great shots of Michael. There's not as great setups for Michael. It's very slashery where he just pops out now. He just pops out, slashes them, like stabs them with his knife, and then it's over. Like I don't know, it just doesn't seem as visceral, doesn't seem as brutal. Now it's just more I pop up and I stab you with this little teeny scalpel knife.
It felt much more clockwork too. This movie was a much more difficult sitting, but when Michael Myers finally shows up, it's like, with the exception of the doctor's office, for the most part, you know exactly what's going to happen. And a lot of that psychologically, just seeing the movie as a kid, there's no way to undo that. But still, though, man, this was a tough sitting for me. It was really, really difficult sitting through this movie, which makes me a little nervous because I haven't seen 4 or 5 yet. So I'm thinking, if this was hard, how bad is Rob Zombie's Halloween going to be? How bad is Halloween 5 going to be if this was difficult?
I mean, I don't even know where I rate 4 and 5. Obviously, I don't want to spoil my opinion of it before we get there. But I don't know. Is this the second best movie in the franchise? I don't know. I guess we'll find out when what your opinion is when we get there. I don't know. I feel like it's probably the one that hits closest to the original, but in a way that almost hurts it, like when you're
Agreed.
trying to be something that's already really good and you're trying to mimic that but failing, is that better than another movie which take like part 4 that doesn't really try and recapture the original? It tries to do a little bit more of its own thing with its own beats. Then I feel like you can judge 4 a little bit more on its own merit versus 2, for example. Whereas 2, it's like it was obviously so trying to be the original that it was only going to fail unless they really knocked it out of the park. Whereas I don't look at like 4 and 5 and so on and so forth on that same with those same lenses on, I guess. But we'll get to those when we get to them. Rob Zombie's included.
Yeah.
As far as this movie, I think we've covered it all. And yeah, that would be Halloween 2. So next up, we're going to have Halloween 3 for our next review, which obviously everyone knows does not feature Michael Myers because they tried to take it in more of an anthology series. So we'll see how that goes, how that viewing goes. As for this rating, go ahead and give your rating, sir. What would you rate it? Out of our letter system, we gave Halloween 1. I believe you gave it an A minus.
Correct. Uh-huh.
And I gave it an A. So what would you give Halloween 2?
Man, I gotta give it an F. It's an F. I hate to say it, but it's an F.
Jeez.
This movie was rough, man. It was super rough.
Holy.
It was kind of frustrating too. Like the whole Michael Myers getting shot twice in the head and then like 10 times in the chest and he's fine. Like, oh, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but it's like the characters never engage the mystery. It's like, why can Michael Myers not die? They never even really address it. And that just really was frustrating for me. The first half, honestly, the movie gave me a headache. Like it goes everywhere. And I don't know who any of these people are. So when I spend time with them, I'm invested. And it just goes from group of people to group of people to set piece to set piece. I was just so tired. And it does pick up in the last 25 minutes, but again, they're just doing the Halloween one thing again. So it's just yeah. I did not want to give this an F. I was actually muttering to myself when the credits rolled. I was like, man, I don't want to go on the podcast and give the movie a fucking F, but I don't want to lie to anybody either. So my opinion. If you guys disagree, let me know why in the comments.
All right. Well, I did not see that coming. That's a shame.
Neither did I.
That was much lower than I would have expected. So I've jumped around on where I'm going to rate this. Ultimately, I gotta go. Man, I've been between. I don't even want to say what it's between, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna give it a B minus. Man, it's tough. Like, yeah, B minus, and that's being generous, and that's, I don't know, man. It's got some good elements, and I don't know. It's like I know what's coming, and I know this still is a Michael that I at least still enjoy the looks of, still enjoy certain aspects of, and I feel like as far as it is a negative that they tried so far, like to stick to the original as close as possible and mimic that tone and everything, I kind of appreciate getting a little bit more, even if it isn't as good. But at the same time, it's also a detractor from the movie. So I'm going to go B minus as much as...
I feel like the right way to watch this movie is to watch the first one, wait a couple of years, and then when you're really kind of itching for more Michael, that's when you pop in part two. I feel like we watched this movie the wrong way. I feel like you definitely don't watch these two movies consecutively. I don't know if that's a good idea, because there's no way you can get the first one out of your head.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too generous on it. To me, it was all like I was dancing between C plus and B minus, and I'm already like, no, I gotta go C plus. I really just, it's just, I feel like as much as it does right, it does one or two more things wrong, and that's what bothers me about it. Is this could have been so much better, but it just feels, I don't know. It really suffers from the cliches and trying too hard to be more of a slasher movie, less of a Halloween one type of movie. So yeah, I'll finalize on C plus. You gave it an F. I gave it a C plus. We'll end it there. So tune in next time. Thanks everybody. Make sure you like the video, share it, subscribe if you haven't already. But more importantly, leave a comment and let us know what you rate the movie, what you thought of the movie, your pros, your cons. What did you feel after viewing this movie? And then we will see you guys soon for Halloween 3, the season of the witch.
Yeah, take care, everybody.
Adios.
I shot him 6 times. What? I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the heart. Come on. I shot him 6 times.